啥子空姐在重庆相亲市场上无人问津，甚至被人追到嫌弃。
If I were a flight attendant, in the history of Chongqing, no one would care, and I might even be chased and rejected. I've worked in this field for a couple of years in Chongqing, and I've found that the advantages and disadvantages of being a flight attendant are very clear. The advantages are mostly job-related, and most of them are high-status wives. The benefits and treatment are great, and the working conditions are quite good. Before you choose a wife, the airline has already screened them for you based on their figure and looks. Speaking of which, their family backgrounds are relatively clean, and they all undergo concentrated training before starting, have good personalities, are caring, and possess some medical knowledge. In an economic situation, at least they can maintain stability, right? But why do guys not want to choose such good conditions? Because now, in the eyes of guys, flight attendants are seen as looking for wealthy partners. If the conditions aren't very good, guys talk themselves out of it. However, in reality, most flight attendants come from average, ordinary families. If a family is well off, they definitely wouldn't let their daughter become a flight attendant. Plus, the income of flight attendants is quite average, and there are only a few who rise up. And it's a job that relies on youth. So it's almost impossible for flight attendants to rely on themselves in a big city. In the dating market, they tend to have high standards for guys. But those refined guys often have principles against flight attendants, even looking down on them. In their eyes, at first glance, those girls don't have high education. They are either from lower-tier schools or second-rate ones. Plus, the fast-paced lifestyle, frequent short shifts, different time zones, and day-night reversals make it tough. You two usually aren't in the same district or working at the same place, and you have intermittent mood swings. On the plane, due to the rules requiring them to be gentle and submissive, it leads to repressed emotions becoming rigid. From gray to dark, it turns into a green monster. So the high-end boys, she doesn't really like flight attendants, but the flight attendants look down on ordinary guys, creating a complex situation. All those flight attendants I know, their profiles are just piled up. In the end, many of those flight attendants marry older men, often much older. The profession of flight attendants is very interesting. They can accept a much larger age gap than other professions. Even a 20-year age difference doesn't bother them. This raises the question, why are flight attendants often overlooked in dating events?
Welcome to Asia China Unseen. In today's video, we're diving into the lives of Chinese flight attendants. Who do they typically marry, and would you consider a flight attendant as a potential wife? Being a flight attendant may seem glamorous and impressive, someone to proudly show off. However, behind the scenes, things aren't always as they appear. Due to their looks and professionalism, flight attendants often attract wealthy first-class passengers, many of whom are just flirting. As a husband, would you be okay with that?
Hello， 宝贝们，欢迎来到一的空姐123文学。大家是不是都很好奇，在头等舱工作的乘务员，还有在头等舱工作的乘务长，是不是最后都嫁入了豪门？
Hello, everyone. Welcome to EE's Flight Attendant Literature. Are you all curious if the flight attendants and chief flight attendants in first class eventually marry into wealthy families? Let's briefly discuss this topic. First, there are 3 types of men seated in first class. The first type is successful middle-aged men over 45. At this age, they are established in their careers, have children, and are married. So, at this point, it depends on whether the flight attendants can find someone around their father's age. Of course, I apologize, but in my view, anyone over 45 is considered middle-aged. I'm getting there too, so please don't take offense. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone over 45. The second type of man is someone who is on a business trip, sent by the company. At that time, everyone is just a worker. It's not like they are from a wealthy family, right? So, this doesn't count as marrying into a rich family. The third type is someone who is handsome, has a bit of money, and is a little flirtatious. He might ask for your number, and if you catch his interest, he gets on a plane and notices a prettier flight attendant. Then he meets someone even more attractive in other situations. Will he cheat? Will he be fickle? Right. For me, marrying into a wealthy family or not doesn't matter. What matters is being grounded, working hard, and doing my job well. Striving diligently and earning every penny is the true happiness. Finding someone who respects and loves you equally is the right choice. Look for someone who shares your values and personality. He understands your quirks, and to him, your oddities are just part of you. That's what matters most. What about you?
能不能选空姐做老婆呢？
Can you choose a flight attendant as a wife? Flight attendants, their job is essentially no different from that of restaurant servers, just in different locations. One fly in the sky, the other runs on the ground. Before I became a relationship consultant, I was unfamiliar with this field. Like most people, I thought this profession was high-end and sophisticated. In the past year or two, while doing my last consultations, I met more people from the aviation industry. I learned that flight attendants earn around $17,000 to $18,000 a month. Their competition is just like that of restaurant servers, and it can even be tougher. On the surface, it seems enviable, but in reality, it's quite average. These flight attendants graduate from various vocational colleges. There are 3 tiers: high, medium, and low. Those with higher education, good looks, and great figures go to first and second tier airlines. Those with lower qualifications mostly work in third and fourth tier cities, earning only a few thousand a month, and many are unemployed. Some only have a uniform, that's about it. Sign up for the application, create an image as a flight attendant, and then feel disgusted by this chaotic airline industry. Behind the scenes, it's like those big shots making a fortune. You have to understand, the more women there are, the harder it is to get by. When flight attendants first enter the industry, 1 or 2 of them are very proud. After 3 to 5 years, their gossip rivals that of the entertainment industry, but they are more discreet and harder to notice. Some flight attendants start making a name for themselves in school, and after graduation, they are worth millions, with private cars waiting for them. Oh, behind every glamorous facade, there are always some bright spots. In the aviation industry, it's common to send slippers. Let me tell you a story about a fan. The entire crew flew to a location and checked into a hotel together. In the middle of the night, a flight attendant knocked on the door, asking to deliver slippers. This fan, who was a new co-pilot, was really confused and firmly told the flight attendant, "I have slippers in my room, why are you bringing them at this hour? Why aren't you asleep? We have to get up early tomorrow." That flight attendant, you see her, it's like looking at a fool. She glanced at her and just walked away. The next morning, this flight attendant came out with the security officer. That security officer isn't handsome. But her dad is the head of the airline, overseeing the flight attendants. Now, the flight attendant has become like that nightclub girl. She's a loyal customer of a certain cosmetic surgery clinic. The outside world has given the flight attendant various halos, creating a huge change in the mindset of the workers and raising expectations among the audience. If not, that flight attendant uniform wouldn't have become a popular item on a certain shopping platform. Of course, there are good captains and flight attendants. They work diligently, right? They take their jobs seriously and serve the people. They work for a year, otherwise they send a few $1,000s home every month. However, most people end up being like a drop of rat droppings. After all, the temptations are right in front of them. I have a fan who became a captain at 29 and is now 33. His previous girlfriend was a leader at a certain company, but he didn't say why they broke up. She was with him for 10 years, earning over $1 million a year, bought a house worth over $1 million, and drove a car worth $50,000 to $60,000. The family is in decent circumstances, and the parents don't require her to send money. Being a flight attendant isn't a high-paying job. The annual salary is around $100,000, while a regular crew member might make over $200,000 at best. In first-tier cities, that's not a promising figure. The flight attendant profession is currently in an awkward phase of working a lot, taking a long time but earning little. On the surface, the income seems good, but it really doesn't allow for savings. The base salary minus Social Security is so low that it only covers utility bills. The salary doesn't fluctuate much either. It all depends on scheduling. The flights and assignments are set in stone, and to put it bluntly, it's a fixed system. Honestly, don't blame me for being direct. The career path of flight attendants is short and narrow. It's essentially low-skilled physical labor. When will they stop being flight attendants? Many of them have degrees that might not even be better than a small streamer. So, a lot of flight attendants are clear about their goals. They want to marry rich. They can only keep serving slippers to get what they want, but you can't say they're wrong.
After all, who doesn't want a good life? If you say flight attendants change husbands overnight, that's a bit much, but it's pretty close. Captains generally don't. Marry flight attendants. Most flight attendants end up marrying men in first class, often 10 years older. To put it bluntly, if flight attendants take off their uniforms, they aren't necessarily more noble than women in nightclubs.
Flight attendants spend long hours on flights, always smiling and taking care of passengers. When they return home, they may want to relax and not have to keep up that cheerful front. With their job taking them high into the sky most of the time, you'll have limited time together and will likely be wondering where they are working, sleeping, or spending time with someone else.
Today, we talked about flight attendants. This profession actually faces some disadvantages in the matchmaking market. Generally speaking, the girls are quite beautiful, have good figures, and are young. But why are there so few guys willing to date flight attendants? Because in the minds of guys, dating a flight attendant means you need to have money. So, average guys are hesitant to pursue flight attendants, and flight attendants also tend to overlook average guys. However, in reality, many of these flight attendants in Beijing come from average backgrounds. Families with better conditions nowadays are reluctant to let their children become flight attendants. Moreover, flight attendants' income is also average. They earn around 10 to 20,000 yuan, and during the pandemic, they might not even make 10,000. Their opportunities for advancement are quite limited, so it's very unlikely for flight attendants to establish themselves in Beijing. Therefore, they have higher expectations for men's assets and income. However, on the flip side, men with higher income and assets are less likely to seek out flight attendants because flight attendants generally have lower education levels. Most have associate degrees, and even among those with bachelor's degrees, many are from lower-tier schools, with very few from better institutions. Additionally, their work schedule isn't great, constantly flying back and forth. So, these outstanding guys don't really go after flight attendants. So, who do these flight attendants end up marrying? A significant number of them marry divorced men or those with children, often older than themselves. The flight attendant profession is quite interesting. They can accept a larger age gap than other professions. After watching this video, if anyone has tried being a flight attendant, please reply in the comments to see if this is the case. In short, it's hard for flight attendants to find partners in Beijing, so parents should try not to let their kids apply to be flight attendants. Being a flight attendant is no longer the glamorous job it was 20 years ago.
Unless you're extremely wealthy, in which case you could even ask your wife to quit her job. Would an average guy be brave enough to pursue a flight attendant? Share your thoughts in the comments below.